There are horror films that terrify people with monsters, violence, and the supernatural, but none of them have unsettled and scared me as the 1995 film Safe. Directed by Todd Haynes, this film isn't even usually categorized as horror, yet Safe instills a greater sense of fear and unease than any horror film I've ever watched. Instead of relying on jump scares or grotesque imagery, it harps on something more abstract: the helplessness, isolation, and painful side effects of being a human. So, how exactly does Safe translate those emotions onto the big screen and scare us? In this video, I'll analyze the film and show why I consider Safe as the scariest film I've ever watched. Before we start, some of you might not know Todd Haynes' Safe, so I'll cover the basics for you. The film follows Carol White, played by Julianne Moore. In the beginning, Carol White is a seemingly healthy woman living a routine suburban life. But inexplicable symptoms began to creep in: nosebleeds, coughing fits, and dizziness, often triggered by random everyday environmental factors. Her reactions become more severe and unpredictable, culminating in full-blown panic attacks where she gasps for breath, collapses, and appears as though she is suffocating from an invincible force. Despite seeking medical help, Carol finds no concrete answers. Doctors dismiss her symptoms, suggesting stress or psychosomatic illness. In desperation, she turns to alternative treatments, eventually retreating to a remote wellness center that claims to offer a cure. But rather than improving, she becomes even more isolated. By the film's end, her illness has not gone away. It has consumed her entire existence, reducing her to a ghost of her former self. One thing to note is that although Safe is not a horror film by genre, it is shaped and crafted to feel like one. The film is structured with this eerie stillness and slow building tension, one that's akin to most psychological horror films, which often suggests that something sinister is lurking just beneath the surface of the film. We can see this play from the way the film shows the characters blocking, or the dialogue,
But anyway, it's just made me more aware than I used to be.
or even the editing. However, one aspect in which it shines is in the cinematography. Throughout the film, there are many scenes like this, where the camera slowly zooms in on Carol as though something unseen is steadily approaching her. We can also see it in this scene. The film's cinematography is inspired by films like Michelangelo Antonioni's Red Desert and Chantal Akerman's Jeanne Dielman. Like Safe, the film also follows a woman protagonist who is suffering from psychological distress in an alienating world. Safe adopts a similar approach, using wide, sterile frames to isolate Carol within her environment, keeping her away from people literally and figuratively. By utilizing that distance and negative space, the film emphasizes her dissociation. She is often dwarfed by empty rooms or sterile landscapes, making her appear insignificant and emotionally disconnected. This visual style reinforces the idea that she is slowly fading, physically and psychologically, just like the main character from Red Desert and Jeanne Dielman. But what differentiates Safe from these psychological dramas is the extra steps it takes. Slow zoom and the uncomfortable closeness of the camera instills this awkwardness and anxiety in the audience that they didn't expect to feel. This implants a sinister sense of the world in which our main character lives and the future she'll be heading towards. These interpretations makes more sense when we see the whole scene in which this technique takes place. These scenes are usually succeeded by Carol's sickness manifesting suddenly, as if an external force is attacking her. By using this technique, the film subliminally equates these mysterious attacks as this sinister, hurtful thing that we have no control over. It immerses us in Carol's experience of her illness and her isolation. So as the film continues using it on the other scenes, just a simple shot like this is already enough to give us anxieties and worries about what's to come for her. Put simply, using the zooms and long takes reflects what the film wants you to understand, which is how scary this experience is to Carol. The central story of Safe relies on this sickness. It is as mysterious as it is terrifying, never named, never fully understood. This vagueness forces the audience into the same helpless confusion that Carol experiences, using that ambiguity to interpret the sickness as many scary and fearful things that are happening in the real world, making the film feel more insidious. For example, Safe has been widely interpreted as an allegory for the AIDS crisis, which was a hot topic around which the film takes place. The illness in the film shares disturbing parallels with the way AIDS was perceived in the late 20th century: mysterious, incurable, and more heartbreakingly, socially alienating. By this interpretation, the sickness can be seen as a critique of how society deals with particular illnesses that defy easy explanation through its effect on the social and psychological life of people that are infected. Instead of offering compassion or real help, the world distances itself from the afflicted, leaving them to fade away in isolation. Another interpretation that we can take, which the filmmaker Todd Haynes also mentions, is how the illness is a critique of New Age recovery or alternative medicine. Unable to find the answer in conventional medicine, Carol turns to alternative medicine. Instead of finding the much-needed answers, her trip to recovery progressively went down. While she keeps trying to be normal, going on with her life in this retreat, the leader of this community lives glamorously above and distinctly a part of the community of sick people, including Carol, who has to pay him money to live there. These interpretations shows us the dark side of this alternative medicine, how figures like Dunning exploit people's suffering and offer false hope for financial gain and obedience. Carol, like the others in the community, isn't healed. Instead, by the end of the film, Carol is reduced to a hollow shell, whispering to herself in the mirror, a tragic attempt to convince herself that she still exists in a meaningful way. But us, the audience, knows the truth. She has already disappeared. And that last sentence perfectly sums up the true horror of Safe: the slow, inevitable loss of self, the inescapable dread of being reduced to nothing, and the eventual realization to lose hope. At its core, Safe is the story of Carol White's slow descent into nothingness. Unlike traditional narratives, where a protagonist struggles against their circumstances and bounces back and learns a valuable lesson for them, Carol's story is simply about a person who tries to fight back against the circumstances but fails. There's no happy ending. It is only a disturbing cautionary tale about the failure to live one's life in the end. This disturbing cautionary tale angle in the film has worked very well because we see Carol really trying to get better throughout the film. She doesn't just accept her illness and the pain within it, she fights back. But due to her sickness, societal expectation, and an overwhelming sense of meaningless, things become more and more helpless. Through Carol's slow, inevitable loss of her body and mind, the film perfectly captures how scary the feeling of helplessness is. Unable to control your life and body despite having full authority, slowly losing the ability to be free and do things you like. The bleak story of her journey also pushes us to lose hope in humanity. In the end, her failure to save herself and transform reflects a realization that no one will save you, and that the people around you may simply let you fade away. When the main character, the person whom we take our inspiration from, fails, it breaks down any expectation we have towards hope. Humans bounce back from failures using hope to better themselves. But when their hope is gone, we might never even want to try. We become shells of ourselves and just wait the day of our end. For me, to see a film having such a minuscule view of human life is why this film scares me. Subscribe.